a bit more predictability. So what my methodology has always been is to look at what is the bias of the technology itself, and then how does that affect us in the real world and the way we use it, in order for me, in this case, to come up with simple commands to help give people more command over the medium rather than to be commanded by it. So a really simple one is time, right? In a digital space, there really is no such thing as time. Digital media are asynchronous, meaning they don't exist in time. A computer program doesn't really run in time. It has a clock. But in order for computer programs to be able to work with human beings, they do not recognize time. They live in a sequence. This way, they can wait for a command from a human being and not experience that any differently than if they get the instantaneous command from a program, right? So they don't live in time. And the earliest kinds of computer interactions that we had were also asynchronous. They were outside time. Right? The first computer bulletin board that I was on, it was before the net. It was called the Well. And a lot of people write about the Well and the folklore of the Well. The Well was just a bulletin board. It was just an online discussion. But the beauty of the Well is that it was truly asynchronous. Right? It was consonant. It was consistent with the asynchronous quality that underlies the net and our programs. The way you would use the Well is you would turn on your computer, you would plug it into a modem that plugged into the telephone line. You would call up the server, you'd download the conversation that was happening up to that moment from the server to your computer. Then you would log out. You would read the whole conversation up to that point, and then you'd think, how can I add to that? What do I have to say about that? It might take you overnight or even a whole day to think about how were you going to participate in this conversation of other people who you respected. You'd type a paragraph or two, you'd edit it, you'd make it just right. Then you would dial back into the computer, upload your contribution, and it would go into that conversation. And you'd wait a day or so, or maybe even log in twice in the same day to see who responded to what you had to say. Right? The beauty of it was that you had a deeper conversation online than you could offline. So we were taking advantage of the asynchronous characteristics of the net in order to have a better, deeper conversation. It was like chess by mail. And you'd have a conversation online where you could actually be as smart as you wished you were in those conversations in real life. Right? It was a place to be smarter, not dumber. But what happens when we take an asynchronous medium and turn it into an always-on medium, which we do now with our cell phones and our smartphones and iPads in our pockets? Right, has anyone ever experienced what they call phantom vibration syndrome? Right, where you think your cell phone is vibrating in your pocket even though it's not there? Right? That is a nervous system. That's the human nervous system misadapting to a technology. This is because your nervous systems are being fried. Right? Because you're not actually catching up with an always-on synchronous medium, you're attempting to catch up with an asynchronous medium that is pinging you rather randomly, right? You are not moving into the moment with Google Now and Twitter Live, right? You are just moving into the asynchronous past and actually pulling yourself out of the now. That's not comfortable, and that's why we have now human beings are exhibiting the kinds of stresses that used to only be seen with air traffic controllers, who were attached, basically neurologically, to a larger focus of awareness than is appropriate for our organism. Or another simple bias, distance. Right? My command for that is live in person. Right? These technologies are biased towards distance. That's what digital technologies and networks were always for long distance. It was made to withstand nuclear attack. Right? A decentralized network. Even television is about what? Television. Remote viewing. Television. That's what telecommunications are, for things that are far away. It's not really a great mode of communication for two people who are in the same place at the same time, right? They could probably talk to each other better than they can text to each other, given that they're on the same couch. And that seems obvious, but I walked into a classroom of a university in Tennessee where the students gathered in the college classroom, logged onto terminals, and then went into Second Life, where they experienced a simulation of the classroom they were already in order to have class together. That's real, right? I've gone to this is only my first PowerPoint ever, and it's not really a PowerPoint, it's just some pictures from my book. But I've been to conferences where they didn't want to let me get on stage because I did not have a PowerPoint. They were that addicted. They thought that their audience needed it. They couldn't get into their heads that they brought a body 3,000 or 4,000 miles to a space to interact, as if this is obsolete. And I promise you it's not obsolete. It's human-to-human communication. Right, so the underlying technology, the way the technology actually works, dictates in part the way the technology actually works. Do you understand what I'm trying to say there? That the way the technology works matters to the way it will impact what we do. And that if we know how the technology works, if we know its biases, we're going to be better off. So the one that matters very much for us here is this one, scale. Right? Everything online wants to scale up. It's one of the things that Tim O'Reilly talks about a lot when he invented, I think he invented Web 2.0 as a term. I think that's one of his claims to fame. And then last year he talked about something he called Web cubed. Right? His main idea is that business online will scale up. That if you are a content maker of some kind, that eventually you will be aggregated by someone above you, right? And the aggregator will make all the money. That the people that will really make the money online are the people who keep the lists of what all of us over here do. Right now, the only flaw in that logic, of course, is that if the aggregator of these sites is going to be the one who makes the money, then eventually the aggregator of aggregators will make the money, and then the aggregator of those aggregators, and so on. Right? So that you have an incubator that incubates incubation companies. Right? It keeps scaling up. That will be the tendency in an infinite regression. So then what do we do as publishers in that universe? Right? If you understand that on the internet everything is going to want to scale up, that there's one side of the business plan that's going to move up, you can either go up there, right, and go into the ether and try to become the meta-aggregator of aggregators. And there's definitely a business for that, right? So let's get one step above Amazon, right? Rather than trying to centralize book publishing, let me be the aggregator who decentralizes book publishing. Let me be the aggregator that lets any kind of bookseller connect directly with any kind of book buyer, not take any of their money, but make my money on the ads and editorial and other stuff that I put around it. Just let the people do their business. What really happens in a universe where successive aggregators disintermediate the people below them, it means that we don't need any of those levels of mediation. It means that we are moving into a future where I, as a writer, really no longer require my Random House and Ingram's and Amazon and B&N to reach the buyer. I don't. I can actually do this directly. I just need a way for him to find me. But I don't need I need a printer. I need a good editor. Right, so what happens in the publishing business as everything scales up, as everything becomes the stock market and holding companies on the one hand, and becomes all disintermediated and internet-y on the other hand, is people who are kept in the corporate structure are not the editors.